Rodentia by David Royce. I was sitting outside having a smoke when I heard the first scream. It pierced the air like a sharp knife cutting through soft butter. It was full of fear and rose in intensity until I was sure it would wiggle its way into my brain and make my head explode like you see in an old-school horror movie. You see, I live in Cambodia, and overall it's a quiet, peaceful country. That's one of the reasons I moved here. I prefer quiet, and the perpetual noise of modern-day America was starting to get on my nerves. I needed to get as far away as possible. Most people who decide to expatriate themselves for Southeast Asia choose the neighboring country of Thailand. And since I moved to get away from those very loud, obnoxious people, I took the path less traveled and landed smack dab in a country built in and around a jungle. One of the smallest countries in the world, one of the poorest as well. But it's mostly quiet, and you can't beat the cost of living, $50 a month for my apartment. Generally, the only sounds you hear at night here are crickets, frogs, geckos, and maybe the throttles of motorbikes as people go about their nightly business. But the shrill keening of this noise told me that someone was either scared for their life or suffering a horrifying death. Shit happens, as the saying goes. I wished whoever it was a peaceful transition to the afterlife as I sucked away on my ciggy. Until it didn't stop, and I realized the screaming was coming from inside of my apartment. Well, apartment is a loose term in my case. It's a room with a bed, a kitchen area, and a bathroom. I could give you the whole 25-cent tour in about 30 seconds. But, as I said, $50 a month. I debated whether to finish my smoke or go check out the screaming. Common sense fell on the former, never run towards a scream, but my girlfriend was inside and I determined that she was the source of the noise. I opened the door and peeked inside. My girlfriend, Sang Lai, stood on the bed, her feet seemingly dancing to a tune I couldn't hear. Her eyes were wild and her feet bounced back and forth as if she had a fire lit underneath. "What's the matter?" I asked. She pointed towards the kitchen, her eyes as wide as a semi-trailer. She babbled something, but I didn't understand her. She spoke very little English, and I spoke even less of her language. We communicated mainly by our own version of charades and hand gestures. But by all accounts, there was something in the kitchen that made her scream like the victims in a slasher movie. I put my hands up to let her know it was okay. I'd take care of it. And I meant that. Until I saw what she was screaming about. I saw a head slowly turning the corner in the kitchen. It was black as night. Its eyes glowed red, and its snout twitched from a whiskered face. I froze as it slowly flexed its body around the corner. It was the biggest rat I've ever seen. Surely as long as my forearm, and with the tail, probably stretched from the tips of my fingers to my elbow. Its eyes glowed red, and I swear it looked at me like a predator looks at a meal. It wasn't afraid and just sat there, staring, almost daring me to do something about its presence in my apartment. So I did. I stomped in and made a guttural sound in my throat as I waved my hands above my head. I've heard you should try and make yourself appear as large as possible, but that might have been for bears. I wasn't sure. It didn't move and didn't seem to be intimidated at all. I looked at Sang Lai, standing on the bed, her eyes full of fear, and shrugged. What else am I going to do? She wasn't having any of that live and let live stuff though, and basically, in her own way, told me to kill it as she ran her thumb across her throat. Its fur was black, slick, and wiry. The tail had the girth of my wrist, the rings looping around it shining like an oil spill. It stared at me as I froze in the doorway. I didn't sense any fear in its gaze, its eyes almost daring me to do something. I looked for a weapon and found a broom hiding behind the front door. It wasn't much, but it was the only weapon I could find. I picked it up and looked at the beast. Was it smiling at me? As if my weapon of choice weren't enough? That might have been my imagination, but I swear that's what it looked like. I grasped the wooden handle and slowly made my way across the main room towards the kitchen. I approached cautiously, raising the broom in my hands, wielding it like a sword. I only hesitated when a thought went through my mind. Well, what if it runs off? I mean, there I am on the cusp of being a hero, and the wretched thing decides to run away and I never see where it goes. What then? Obviously, it had gotten in somehow and maybe had its own little hidey hole that allowed it to come and go at will. I certainly couldn't continue living there knowing it made a home within my walls. I would have to burn the place down and start anew. A bit drastic, but you get my point. The very thought of me fast asleep, as this horrid creature slowly crawls over my flesh, its claws sweeping over my stomach, up to my chest, and finally my face, its whiskered snout taking in my breath, its hideous oily tail oozing across my lips as I dream, tasting of garbage and rotten meat. That would not do. Fuck this, I thought. I ran toward the beast screaming, broom raised, my adrenaline pumping. I swung and mostly missed. The bristled end of the broom caught on its backside, though. It tried to skitter back, but its fur was entwined in the bristles of the broom. I took the opportunity to sweep it across the floor like a hockey puck. Its claws tried to find purchase on the linoleum, but to no avail. I swept it to the open door. As I approached the door, it reared back once more. It lunged at my leg, but I sidestepped it with ease. Then, holding the broom like a hockey stick, I aimed for the bleachers and sent the evil creature sailing outside. I saw its trajectory as it flew through the air. Now, outside of my humble abode are 3 brick pillars that support the overhanging roof. Each is solid and thick, with enough room between them to drive a car, if someone wanted to do that. I should also note that I'm no athlete in any sense of that word. But whether by chance or luck, the rat went flying and directly slammed against the middle pillar. It made a horrible cracking sound as its body twisted almost in half upon contact. It oozed down the brick, leaving a trail of viscous liquid, and landed with a splat on the ground below. That should have been the end. Then it moved. The body was bent in half, shaped almost like a horseshoe, but its front legs tried to grasp at the ground even as its back legs lay limp, useless, and unmoving. It was the face that shook me. It stared at me. I knew that it was probably just staring in my general direction with no thought at all of my presence, yet deep inside what passes for my soul, I knew it was not only staring directly at me, but judging. A chill ran through me, despite the overwhelming heat that always persists in Cambodia, no matter the time of year. What was I to do now? As much as those rodents disgusted me, I'm not a killer. I don't like to see living things suffer. I certainly couldn't just walk over there and stomp on it like a bug. It was much too large for that, and the thought of getting that close freaked me out a little bit. But I couldn't just let it suffer like it was either. That wasn't right. I walked back into my apartment. Seng Lai was still on her perch, her face a rictus of terror. I grabbed a plastic bag and the broom. My thought was to sweep the still living corpse into the bag and deposit it into the garbage bin. Out of sight, out of mind, and all that. I assured her that it was all right. I went back out the door, ready to prove my worth as a man. But the rat was gone. The bloody trail on the pillar was still there, but the body was not. There's no way, I thought. I was inside for no more than 30 seconds. Another animal couldn't have taken it within that time, and it certainly didn't get away under its own power. So where did it go? I walked around outside for a good 10 minutes searching. I must have looked like a right idiot, a shirtless old man with a bag in one hand and a broom in the other. I never saw the carcass. It was gone. But a vision flashed through my mind right then, unwanted and uninvited. I saw an army of rodents scurrying out of every crack, crevice, and opening available. They quickly and reverently took their fallen comrade in their teeth and claws, taking it to their lair somewhere below the building. They did this with an intelligent proficiency that took less time than it had taken me to grab the broom and garbage bag. Walking back inside, Seng Lai appeared to be placated. She eyed me suspiciously. Gone? She asked. I managed to smile and nodded. It technically was gone. I took care of it, I assured her. Dreams are a funny thing. Some people say they're your imagination running wild. Others say they're visions for you to interpret. Others still say they're the things on your mind that you can't let go of. I don't know if any of those are true, but I can assure you, sometimes they freak me out. In my dreams, I'm sleeping, but I'm still in a dream. You know what I mean? I'm in bed, nice and snuggled, until that dream comes. The one with the rats. I'm sleeping, you see, but then all of a sudden I'm awake. I can't move. I notice a mattress bulging beneath me as if it's alive. I want to scream and I want to pick up my body and move, but I can't. My mouth is open, my body tense, yet I lay there unmoving. Claws start ripping through the fabric of my mattress as dozens of rats tear away at the material, clawing their way to my prone body. In my nightmare, I can neither move nor scream. I'm paralyzed as these creatures chew through my bedding and set their sights upon me. They begin by biting off my toes, but that's only the appetizer. They slink their way up my legs and my torso, taking bits of flesh as they travel. When they reach my face, it is the most horrifying of all. I keep my mouth and eyes shut tight, but they're not dissuaded. They go for the fleshy parts, the most malleable. I can feel them tearing at my lips, my tongue the ultimate prize. My eyes are taken with ease, teeth and claws easily peeling the lids until they get to the crunchy, succulent orbs beneath. The sounds of feasting fill my ears until those too are served up as supper. I always wake up in a sheen of sweat. My heart always beats at a pace that is probably not good for a man of my age. My mouth is always dry and tasting of filth. I try to convince myself that the dreams would end sooner or later. My imagination was running out of control, and this was my brain's way of purging those images. I became so good at lying to myself that the nightmare stopped briefly, and I was once again able to sleep soundly through the night. Until the incident with the neighbor. My neighbor was an old woman who had lost most of her hearing, and even more of her mind. She would often scream at the sky for no particular reason, and nobody paid her any mind. The mental health care in this country is archaic. She was no threat to anyone, though, so we all just let her rage. But I made it a point to ask her if she needed anything whenever I went to the store. I would bring her back water and bread, and she would always be grateful. We had developed a relationship of sorts, until that fateful day. I woke up to the sounds of screaming from outside of my apartment. The flashing blue let me know that the police were involved. I stumbled as I put on my shorts, not ready and not willing to see what was outside. I opened the door to chaos. The police were there, but so were a mass of people, phone cameras out recording. All eyes seemed to be on my neighbor's apartment. I walked out and saw police everywhere, trying to keep people back. I grabbed the nearest officer and asked, in the most butchered excuse for their language, what's going on? He simply shook his head as he let loose a stream of vomit, the likes of which I've never seen. I skirted around him and peeked inside. Well, that was a mistake. The old woman was laying in her bed, strings of flesh flapping in the breeze from her ceiling fan, her internal organs mostly beside her. She had been eaten, or close to it, and the smell was copper and decay. But her face was the worst. Her eyes were gone, nothing but black carnivorous circles. Her lips, which had screamed, pleaded, and formed words for several decades, were not there. She had the look of a smiling beast that didn't know it was bested. And in the maw, it left behind a grayish member. Her tongue had nearly been cleaned from her mouth. This is my nightmare, I thought. Her visage changed to my face, my mutilated flesh, my torn intestines. I was staring at myself on my mattress, helpless, as the vermin emerged and took me apart piece by piece. I blinked. The old woman returned in her unholy glory. I'm a nervous wreck even after the body has been taken away and the landlord has cleaned and prepared the apartment for the next tenants. I feel an overwhelming need to stay alert and on guard at all times. And word gets around here in Cambodia. People have friends who know people who know others. The word is that this was an animal attack. No mention of what kind of animal, but I had a pretty good idea. Exterminators came by and determined that there were absolutely no signs of rats. No droppings were found, no telltale greasy streaks on the baseboards. Not a single rodent was seen. Yet here we are. My apartment has become my fortress. Seng Lai complains, of course. She wants to go out. She wants to open the windows. She wants to live a normal life. I know they're here, though. I can hear them, skittering in the walls, eating their way through the materials until they break free and ravage our flesh. I hear nothing else. Their squealing sounds pierce my mind, forming words. They tell me they're coming. They tell me they're angry. They tell me they're hungry, most of all. They are sentient and advancing every day. They're talking, planning, judging, and soon, my friends, they will fulfill their plan. I now know what happened to the body of the rat that at first invaded my apartment. My vision at the time confirmed. They took it. They gathered and planted their teeth into its flesh and took it to some kind of burial ground for their own kind. And now they have set their sights on me, the perpetrator of the crime. I have become the enemy, and retribution will be harsh and painful. I have plugged every crack, sealed every window, and only allow myself to sleep in 1 hour increments. Seng Lai doesn't understand. I can tell she's scared, but there's nothing to be done about that. I've tied her to the bed so she doesn't slip away when I'm not looking. She wants desperately to go, leaving the door wide open and exposing me to their bloodthirsty intentions. I can't allow that to happen. Her family will be worried, but I have no way to explain to them that I'm keeping her safe. They'll have to understand. All they have to do is listen to the walls. How long will it take for them to chew through the wood? I have poured boxes worth of rat poison on every available surface. I have surrounded myself with knives, pointed sticks, and a hammer. I'm as prepared as possible. Seng Lai says she's hungry. I untie her, tell her to make some rice, forgetting that I poured a good amount of rat poison in the rice bag. The sounds of her retching and her cries of pain echo off the walls. Yet even that isn't enough to drown out the voices of the incoming Rodentia. Their scrabbling is frantic, desperate, and persistent. I hear them, and they are oh so hungry. The end.